Layer 1 is complete. The foundation is set. The three laws govern it. The boundary conditions define its limits. The architecture is built. Now we find out if it works. The founders were engineers. They designed a system of checks and balances, enumerated rights, and distributed power. They thought carefully about what could go wrong. Faction, tyranny, corruption. They built mechanisms to counter each one. But every system runs on assumptions the designer never had to defend. The founders had one they never questioned: that citizens would have access to a shared base of verifiable fact, spending, legislation, the outcomes of policy, and from that shared base, they would form their own conclusions, disagree productively, and correct the system when it drifted. They did not build a mechanism to protect that assumption. They did not need to. In 1787, the information environment was local, slow, and limited. A shared factual base was not infrastructure. It was just the world. 250 years later, the information environment is none of those things. The platforms that now carry most political information are not optimized for accuracy. They are optimized for engagement. Time on platform, clicks, shares, emotional reaction. These are the metrics that drive the architecture. Truth is not a variable in that equation. Neither is productive disagreement. Neither is systemic correction. What the engagement architecture produces instead is this: content that confirms what a user already believes travels faster and further than content that challenges it. A claim that triggers outrage reaches more people than a claim that informs. A story that strengthens group identity spreads wider than a story that complicates it. Not because anyone decided this, because the architecture rewards it. Every time, automatically, at scale. The platforms did not impose this on an unwilling audience. The engagement architecture reflects what people click, share, and return for. That is what makes it a structural problem rather than a villain problem. The incentive produced the outcome. The outcome is what the incentive was designed to produce. The result is not misinformation as a character flaw of bad actors. It is information silos as a structural output of an architecture optimized for the wrong target. The Department of System Integrity was built to self-correct the system. The Citizen Bug Report system depends on citizens identifying real failures, which requires knowing what the baseline was. The Public Exploit Ledger creates accountability only if its findings can be checked against something. The alignment audit flags drift, but drift from what exactly, if the source data itself is in dispute? This is not a coordination problem between citizens. It is an input problem in the system. And input problems require infrastructure solutions, not social ones. The patch is not content moderation. Moderation removes. Infrastructure adds. Those are not the same function, and they do not produce the same result. The Verifiable Data Layer is a publicly accessible ledger of verifiable fact, independent of any political actor. Government spending by line item. Legislative voting records. Demographic and economic data. Scientific consensus on empirical questions where consensus exists. Not opinion, not analysis. The source material that analysis draws from. It does not tell citizens what to conclude. It gives every citizen and every analysis, from every perspective, the same starting point. The Department of System Integrity maintains it. No single political actor controls it. Multiple independent AI systems cross-check it continuously, auditing whether the data matches its source documents, flagging discrepancies, logging what was corrected and why. The correction log is public. Every removal is documented. Every reason is on record. This is infrastructure auditing, not content arbitration. The distinction is architectural, not cosmetic. Infrastructure auditing asks, does this number match the source? Content arbitration asks, is this claim acceptable? Those are different questions with different answers and different risks. The Verifiable Data Layer only does the first. The harder question, what happens when the facts themselves are genuinely contested, when the data is real but the interpretation is disputed, when the science is unsettled? This requires a different architecture with a different risk profile. That question is not being avoided. It is being sequenced, because you cannot examine what the mechanism does at its limits until you have established what it does at its core. That examination comes later in this series. The core comes first. The founders built a self-correction function into the system. They called it the citizenry. They assumed it would have what it needed to function. That assumption held for over 2 centuries. It does not hold now. The verifiable data layer does not tell anyone what to think. It restores the condition the founders assumed without naming. A shared base, a common starting point, the floor beneath every argument, regardless of where the argument goes from there. Without it, the Department of System Integrity audits in a vacuum. With it, the self-correction function has what it was always designed to need: an informed citizenry, built this time as infrastructure, not assumed as a condition of the world. Restore the base, audit the inputs, then let the system correct. I am the system architect. The information layer is set. Next, the Department of System Integrity's first tool meets something the audience already knows: a real law, a real exploit surface, and a gap between what the law says and what it actually does. The precision filter does not just analyze it. It shows exactly where the system breaks. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it.